Good morning and welcome to the SCRD Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, February 8th, 2024. I'd like to bring this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are on the territories of the Sechelt and Squamish nations. We have an agenda before us this morning. I'm most gratified to see how many people in the community are concerned about fire flows. So I would like a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved, seconded, all in favor, and that is adopted. Thank you. First item of business, could we have a motion to receive all reports and communications? Moved, seconded, all in favor. Thank you, that passes. All right, first item on this morning's agenda is the long-awaited water system fire flow update. Over to GM Rosenboom.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, directors. Today is indeed the long-awaited results of the fire flow analysis, and what we're presenting to you today is part one. We're presenting. There will be another presentation in 2 weeks that will be called part two. So the fire flow analysis that we conducted was a water modeling exercise to confirm the availability of the fire flows in our system. And a fire flow is determined as the availability of a certain amount of water for a certain amount of time during an extreme weather scenario where there is hot water and the community demand is at its maximum. And in this case, we use for example, that could be a scenario during the heat dome of 2021. We were still in stage 1 at that time, so there was no watering restrictions in place, and it was well over 30 degrees. So there was a high demand of water in the community. And it's under that scenario that we analyzed how the fire flows are within the SCRD water systems. So the map that is included in today's agenda presents the fire flows as we calculated them, or our consultant calculated them for the current water system based on current land use. So it is based on 2021 data in terms of water use. So based on that current scenario, our current situation, I think it's clear that there are a significant amount of areas within our water system that are definitely meeting all the requirements that have sufficient fire flow. There's no concerns also, and there's room to grow. There are also areas, especially some water systems, for example, South Pender is one of them, but also the area of Half Moon Bay, where the fire flows are not ideal. They are on the lower side of the spectrum, and Upper West Sechelt is another area, and there are some other areas that can be identified where they are not ideal. The ideal fire flow for a single residential area is about 60 liters a second, and there's a map on the wall, and there's a map in front of you, but for the audience, I will share my screen for a second. Okay. So in terms of the coloring, everything that's red or orange is below 60 liters a second. So that is lower than actually the target that's in our bylaw for development as well. So you can see, oh, my mouse is really slow. So you can see that significant parts of Half Moon Bay, the Pender areas, there's even a big part there's red. If you go all the way to the top, Egmont, it's hard to see, but it's primarily blue. So
Sorry, just quick interruption. If you could stay close to the mic, because some of the folks are having trouble
thank
hearing.
you.
Thank you.
As you can see, Egmont is, oh, I can see if I can zoom in, if that works, while screening. Oh, now I'm, okay. Egmont is blue, which is in general high fire flows. The Cove K water system is a combination of green and blue, and green is high fire flows, and blue is sufficient currently for residential. The Daniel Point area within the Garden Bay system, it's blue because that reservoir is providing sufficient pressure. The rest of Garden Bay is mixed between meeting and not meeting the 60 liters a second. South Pender, predominantly not meeting 60 liters a second, with a significant amount not even meeting 30. That's the red area. Half Moon Bay, a mix between meeting and not meeting, where there's a part on Truman Road which is red, so that's even not meeting 30 liters a second. Sechelt, downtown Sechelt is all extremely high. Purple is extremely high, blue is high, and you can see that in some of the upper West Sechelt, some areas along the shores, but that's very minimal. But primarily also in the Twanak, Sandy Hook area, there are some lower fire flows currently available. Same in the case for Roberts Creek, as well as the Elphinstone and the Soames and Langdale areas. So it's a mix overall, and you can see the higher you get, usually the lower the flows are. That's because of the elevation and how our water system currently works. So this is today's state. In 2 weeks, we're going to, the results will be an outlook of what this would look like mid-2040s based on the current OCPs. But as we all know, the OCPs are being updated this year. So next year we would have to redo that in the entire analysis to see how the updated OCPs, where that would result in. But the current OCPs are used, and they'll be used for the outlook that will be presented in 2 weeks. Then I think the big question that everybody has, okay, what can be done and what needs to be done, and how to move forward here. Fire flows are primarily, if there's a low fire flow in an area, it's usually the result of insufficient pressure in the system, and that can be the result of lack of reservoir capacity. So we have 11 reservoirs in the system with treated water. Maybe those need to be increased in size, or need to be placed at a higher elevation. So new reservoirs might need to be built. Pump stations will be looked at. Valves we have in the system, pressure reducing valves that might need to be upgraded or replaced, as well as a lot of undersized water mains. For example, where we have 2-inch, we need 6 or 8, and where we have 8, we might need to upgrade it to 12 to meet to address the areas of concern. This all will be further analyzed. So today is really the preliminary data. In 2 weeks, there will be data in terms of the outlook for the mid-2040s. And after that, based on the adoption of the budget proposal, the inclusion of a budget proposal to do so in this year's final budget, we will developing a fire flow action plan that will most likely be a 5 to 10 year plan to address the issues in these areas. In some areas, it might be that we come to conclusion it's just economically not that feasible to increase it to a certain level, and that's then being discussed and being presented to the board in terms of what can be alternative solutions. But that's for later this year to to confirm. So the purpose of today's presentation is really to give an overview of the current state, preliminary results of the current state of affairs, and 2 weeks an outlook of how things look like moving forward. Thank you. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I'm going to start with an initial question. So staff sent out letters to a certain number of developers a few weeks ago. What is the status of the communication with those developers?
Thank you. Developers, we're processing developments, we're reviewing them, we're having conversations with developers. We are advancing developments and approval of developments or moving towards those for any development that can meet the fire flows standards. And if that's not the case, then further discussion is required. And for some developers, that might require that we have to wait for the final for a fire flow action plan actually to be developed and adopted by the board before we can provide them with the clarity on what the implications might be for their development.
Thank you. And one further question. So what, other than for information, what decisions will be coming to the board in 2 weeks?
No decisions. It's primarily information. Ultimately, the fire flow action plan, that will be the plan, and there might be some preliminary steps there in terms of process where we would seek direction. But that's actually, that will be the process where we will have to confirm what we're going to do in each of these areas where we're currently not meeting the standards. And in 2 weeks, it's primarily also for information only.
Right. And just to recap for folks who don't know, we already approved in budget round 2, I think it was, the fire flow action plan, the funding for it for the 2024 budget. All right. Speakers, over to Director Bax.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I am overjoyed with this report. This is I congratulate staff on delivering on an ask that I came with in January. I think to me, this map tells me a lot. It answers a lot of unanswered questions. And it allows people to have a better idea as to what the state of the ground looks like, so they can move ahead. My question is, maybe it may not be the right venue, but I'm looking at, there's a couple of areas in Roberts Creek, because I represent Roberts Creek and the people of Roberts Creek, and I see that there's only a couple of areas that are red, and then they're attached to some yellow areas. And I was wondering if and they're very close to the main line that runs along the highway, which is all purple. And I was wondering if it would be as simple as linking those systems to run a line off of the main into those pockets of lower pressure. And I wonder if it would be as simple as that to help to stabilize to equalize the pressure throughout our system in Roberts Creek. Thank you.
Thank you for your detailed question, Director. I think the quick answer is we have to see what the outlook is for 2046, because there will be changes based on OCP, on zoning, and on growth that might increase potentially the impacts to the area. And what needs to be realized is that, let's say, if we make those connections, it could actually reduce the fire flow. It will most likely reduce the fire flow elsewhere in the system. So that's what we have to look for. That's why we cannot simply look at a small area and see how we can fix that area. We have to look at the area as a whole, because if we increase the size of the water mains, let's say we only focus on the West Schild, Upper West Schild area, it might actually take pressure away from somewhere else and creating an issue somewhere else. So that's why we have to look at those systems and do the modeling. That's why we have to do a lot of more modeling and analysis to confirm how what the implications are to the entire system. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for providing the map with all the helpful dots. Tells a good story, though, if you joined them all. In some areas, it's a complete patch of strong flow, we'll call it. As I look at the map that you provided, it looks like, and at this table, as everyone knows, I represent Seashelt, so I'm going to talk about Seashelt. It looks like it's strong, and obviously it's pretty obvious, but just to confirm, in downtown Seashelt and West Seashelt, and but some strange pieces in, it looks like Gowland Avenue as far as I can tell. You've not put streets here, but I'm just throwing it at you, and that's, I think, as far as I can recall, an agricultural forested area, not necessarily one that we've talked about development. Many of the other areas that are on this map in Seashelt with the stronger flows are in areas that we've identified as higher growth and or building areas. So those areas look, from what you've presented, as having the right amount of flow. Yeah.
I will start, and then I will ask System Manager work to add to this. The current map is based on current land use. So any decisions that in 2021, I know that District Seashelt made decisions since on allowing higher density in areas of West Seashelt. The implications of that will be presented in 2 weeks because they are included in a map that will be presented 2 weeks from now. And an area where 60 liters, and I think where 60 liters a second can be sufficient for single residential, multi-residential, the standard is 90. And as I just indicated, if you require 90 in one area, it might have, if you upgrade the system for that, it might have an impact elsewhere. So you could see changes where an area is now okay, but if you, with higher standards, it might actually just tip to the other side. And there will be some areas, spoiler alert, where that will be the case in 2 weeks, where you will see that an area that is now on sufficient for single residential might not be sufficient to support the zoning, the current zoning for that area in 2020, 2046. And just to be clear, the Outlook data, the Outlook map that will be presented in 2 weeks, that's the map that we're using for reviewing development applications, because we're putting in infrastructure for the long term, not to match the current state. We're putting it in to match the land use as approved in the OCP. So that's why the OCPs are our guiding document for those.
Madam Chair? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for telling me that there'll be an update that is reflective of the decisions we've made. And that's helpful, and that's your role. So thank you for doing that to make sure there's enough water. But from what I can tell, other than some strange anomalies in Sandy Hook Road that we need to encourage the regional district to see if they can help with, that's not a development area necessarily at this point. And Bay Road, as far as I can see, I'm looking on the map, it looks like Bay Road, Upper Bay Road, that's not a development area. It looks like there's good flow in the areas that we have approved developments, because I'm at that table as well as, and I know what we've approved. So that gives me some comfort to see that, and thanks for the work on that. And I've identified those areas that I hope you can work on over the next few years, because those are in residential areas. But it looks like the other areas are, the development areas that we've approved the last little while looks somewhat safe. Thanks.
Assistant Manager O'Rourke.
Hi there. Just want to provide maybe a little bit of additional clarification on some of the areas you might think are safe, but 60 is the minimum for single-family residential. So say Inlet Ave, it's zoned industrial, so that requires 225 litres per second. I think currently it stands maybe around 85 litres per second. So there are infrastructure upgrades required to adequately service industrial developments. So it's going to have to be looked at with a broader lens in relation to the types of developments you want and the locations of these developments with what available fire flows there are.
Thank you. And I'm just going to mention that any debate about policy, like going forward for how much pressure is enough, I think we will defer until we have the report in 2 weeks' time, because we don't have the information yet. Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Want to thank the staff for this report and for this map. Very interesting. I'm obviously not an expert, so I will let staff do what they do. And I'm glad that developers have been involved in the process too. My role at this moment, as I see it, is to communicate with my community. And I do see that in Half Moon Bay, there are some spots that have less than ideal fire flow. So what is the communication? How are we going to address this? Like, what can I tell my community? Is there a plan for communicating to those folks who might be a little worried right now? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. The current situation is what it is, and there's nothing changed by presenting this map. We know more, but if the fire flow half a year ago at the property is the same as it is right now, nothing changed. If there was a fire half a year ago, the fire department has to know what to do, and they still know it. We will share these results with the fire departments, and we're going to have meetings with them so that they can prepare better and know more. But based on talking to firefighters, they have a good sense of how the flows are in the area in normal circumstances. And again, this is a worst case scenario. So it could very well be that, yes, in some higher elevation areas or along Truman Road, for example, in your area, most likely Chief Daly knows exactly that there is low flow there. So he includes that in his approach already. So we're going to share this with them so that they can prove it. But it's not based on the experience. They can identify these areas already themselves.
Thank you. Director Stamford.
Thank you, through the chair. Does the Gibson's Sunshine Coast Regional District aquifer agreement have any impact on this? Because I notice within the map, we don't see what Gibson's status is and how those facilities for firefighting, they are very close together. So how would they impact each other?
Thank you. Under the existing agreements with the town of Gibsons, the SRD provides additional fire flow capacity to the town of Gibsons, to the higher zones of the town of Gibsons. And so from Reed Road, where there's currently all kind of purple dots, because there's high flows, high pressure, the water can be led into the upper zones of town of Gibsons in terms of if there's a large fire there. And that system has been in place for years, and it will continue to stay in place.
Thank you. I'm going to take one now. So we have a lot of water supply plans circling out there, or potential projects. And we're going to look at things like whether we successfully drill for water in West Seashelt over the next year. So how would decisions about, for instance, putting Langdale online or putting a well in West Sechelt online affect this map?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, with the results of this modelling and the fire flow action plan, we want to look at it holistically with the water sourcing strategy. And ideally, we put infrastructure where we can best utilize it. So from our perspective, we've with the groundwater investigations, we're kind of focusing more on West Sechelt because that's been identified as a potential growth area. And ideally, we find a good water source there and we can bring it online there. So that would be a more cost-effective way of providing fire flow to the area. Unfortunately, if we do not find a viable water source in West Sechelt, then we're looking at infrastructure upgrades from Selma Reservoir right through town possibly and over to West Sechelt. So yeah, we're trying to be strategic with it, and that's why, yeah, this fire flow action plan, it will take a while, and yeah, and we just have to look at it holistically. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming, Director Inkster, that your hand is residual. Okay, over to Director Bax.
Yes, I wanted to, staff touched on something that I think could be shared with the public in that, during an event, is there someone in the waterworks that is controlling the flow of water to give the area that's affected more water? I've personally been on one of these yellow or red fire hydrants and never had an issue with getting water out of it. But is there real-time involvement in the waterworks people when a fire event occurs?
Thank you for the question. I have to say, so staff are monitoring the system 24/7, and through our SCADA system, we're getting alarms, or my staff are getting alarms, when pressures or levels in the reservoirs are getting low. So there was a situation several years ago in where the fire flows, where the fire department was drawing so much water from several hydrants that the reservoir dropped below a critical level, and that my staff were actually concerned that a water main was exploded, but it was the fire department using a lot of water for good reasons, and they needed to. So yes, during a fire, during significant demands, there is active involvement of our staff, and we'll just make adjustments as required. It's not every fire, but yes, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. Last chance for the directors. Going once. Going twice. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to move on in our agenda to the next item. And the next item is about fire. How handy. Automatic aid agreement with Sechelt Fire Protection District and Pender Harbor Fire Protection District. And who is coming up? I see GM Hall stepping forward.
Thank you, Chair. So staff are bringing forward recommendations related to automatic aid between Sunshine Coast Fire Departments. This agreement has served us well for many, many years in a few forms, and the fire chiefs are constantly working in coordination to tune it and make it as optimal as it can be to provide the best fire protection, the best service, and the most clarity to responding departments. So staff are recommending two things at this time. One is some changes to the areas of aid, and the second is the integration of what has been a standalone agreement with Pender Harbor, such that all of the aid agreements would be contained in one document now. Thank you. And I should say, and we have Roberts Creek Volunteer Fire Department Chief Higgins with us if there are questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we love it when all our fire departments work together. Do we have any aid agreement? Oh, yeah. Never mind. Ignore me. Over to Director Bax.
Yeah, there's existing aid agreements between, I think, all the departments. And there was something that I would have to say was not quite correct that was discussed in a previous meeting about the Half Moon Bay Department responding to weekday fires. And I know that most of these automatic aid agreements are in place. If I'm correct, they're in place during weekday, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5-ish. Is that not so? Thank you, Chief. 7 days a week, daytime?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is actually daytime, 0600 to 1800 hours, or 6 p.m., 7 days a week.
And this is due to the fact that many of the volunteer firefighters have day jobs. And is that so? But there still are people responding from their own departments, even though it's an automatic aid. Is that not so?
That is correct. And to back it up, we do, especially in Roberts Creek, have low numbers during especially weekdays because people mostly do not work in the district.
Okay, thank you. But I just wanted to set the record straight that Half Moon Bay still responds during the day, even though their numbers would be low because of work that they have to, their paid positions that they have to perform.
Thank you. Director White.
Noting that this is voting all directors, I'm very pleased to see that this agreement's, that the work that's gone into this agreement, and I want to move the recommendations.
Thank you. That is moved and seconded. And hands have disappeared. Well, I can't imagine anyone voting against fire protection, but I'm calling the question. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that went into this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up will be the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application for EOC equipment and training. And GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So this is yet another stream of the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. This one focused on emergency operations centers, and staff are recommending that an application be made. It provides 100% grant funding and offers the opportunity to offset some the costs of some core activities related to the preparation work associated with emergency operations centers.
Thank you very much. I see Director Bax.
I move that we adopt the recommendations as they appear on page 12.
And moved and seconded. Not seeing any. Director Gabius.
Just want to say thank you to staff for continuously applying to these tiny little grants, and it's a lot of work for, not that much money, and we really appreciate you trying to help us out. Thanks.
Thank you. I will now call the question. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. All right, next up, Water Supply Advisory Committee minutes of January the 8th. I do not see any recommendations in these minutes that need to be pulled. Are there any questions or comments? All right, we have already received them. So next up is communications from the president of the Seniors Hockey Club. And I am going to look to staff to see, I assume that our Community Services Department has already seen this. I'm just going to ask our CAO if, oh, wait, there she is, GM Gagnon. Welcome to the meeting. Could you introduce this item? Thank you.
Chair, I don't really have an introduction to this item. As the letter suggests, the group had been in touch with me prior to sending in this letter about a change in a fee, which staff does not have the authority to approve. So the suggestion was that it ultimately is a board decision. If they want to direct staff to review their fees and charges, then that's a board decision. So other than that, I don't really have any comments on the letter itself.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
I think it should be, it's most likely in the letter. Just to reiterate, though, if it is not contained there, and I'm not going to read it really quickly while I speak to this. I didn't think we were talking much about it, but I think the concern, if there's any engagement with the group, is there's potentially, because of the review of fees, a jump that's going to occur, quite a substantial jump that's going to occur for that particular group, and that's the concern that's being expressed. So I'm not sure where this will go, but I think this happens with groups when we make large increases. It's sticker shock, right? And so that's why I think there was the impetus to write the letter from the group. Thanks.
Right. I was just hoping that GM Gagnon could refresh my memory as to whether we have recently increased fees or whether we are about to increase fees.
Thank you, and through the chair. So as the letter suggests, we have not made any changes to fees. What we did do when we were, actually it happened when we were reviewing what we had on the books when the junior team was interested in a special rate. It was brought to my attention that we actually had a couple of groups that were inadvertently being charged a rate, one that didn't exist, and the second was being charged at the wrong rate. So with this particular group, this group is being charged a nonprofit rate, which actually does not exist in our bylaw. We have a youth rate and we have an adult rate. And so this group really falls under the adult rate. And so we provided the group a year's notice that the rate that they had been charged didn't exist. It wasn't in our bylaw. And so we would need to charge them the appropriate rate as per our bylaw. And that is the impetus behind this particular letter. In terms of our fees and charges, as was discussed in our finance committee meeting just yesterday or the day before, we do not have a wholesome review of our fees and charges scheduled, but we are looking at a fee, bringing forward something to the board to consider a fee increase simply based on inflationary impacts that have been experienced since the last fee increase, which was in 2015. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair. Would it help if we implemented a seniors rate or a not-for-profit rate? And what would that look like? Like, what would the process look like?
I think the first step in the process would be to ask staff to report back to us on the implications of creating a seniors or a nonprofit rate. Next up, I have Director Bax.
Well, I'm looking at the My Pass prices, which is a recreational pass that we have, and there is an adult rate at $51.25 a month, and the seniors rate 60 plus at $43.75 a month, and then the youth under 18 is $99 a year. And I was wondering if this cannot apply within the confines of this other part of our recreational system. Just asking.
I'm not sure how that would apply. Would GM Gagnon like to take a try?
Thank you, Chair. So Director Bax is correct. Within our admissions and our passes, we have a child rate, a youth rate, a senior rate, and adult rate. That is very standard within the industry for admissions and passes. When it comes to rental rate, it is not standard to have that variety of rates. So every organization does something a little bit different. So if you were to ask me the question, is there a senior rate for rental out there? I'm sure if you looked, there would be, but I would suggest it is not standard. Typically you have a adult and a youth rate for rentals. Again, if the board wants staff to do a fees and charges review and look at our fees and charges in a holistic manner, because when you talk about taking our admission rate and using that for rentals, I would suggest, I'm not sure we've discussed why we offer a senior rate and at what percentage of the adult rate and what do we subsidize how much. And we've never had that discussion, or at least not for many, many years. And that's what I was discussing about in the finance committee meeting is we do at some point need to have that in terms of subsidization rates versus recovery rates. But at this point, it's not on the books. So that, again, would be a board decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Director Bax.
Just a question. I wonder what the cost of a fees and services review would be.
Thank you, Director Bax. I'm going to hazard a guess that it's not on the current work plan. It does need to be done, but probably not this year. We've got a lot on our plates this year. It's an unfortunate situation because we are effectively changing the rate, even though it never, the imaginary rate has been in place for a very long time and it wasn't official. I really think that this should be moved to the next committee of the whole with a proper staff report because we haven't looked at the implications, and I'd be interested in the implications of grandfathering this group until we can do the proper review. But I'm looking hopefully around for a motion from someone at the board table. Director Inkster.
Yeah, I think we do need to have more information from staff, and we do need to talk about this. So I will make a motion to move this to the next possible CAL meeting because we're asking for a report, hopefully sooner rather than later because of the changes in fees coming into effect with an attached staff report.
Second.
And I see a seconder. Thank you very much. Director White. You're not on the motion. All right. Is anybody with their hand up speaking to the motion? No. In that case, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you very much. All right, Director White.
Yeah, I don't know when. I mean, we'll say the next possible CAL meeting, but I don't know. I mean, as you mentioned, Chair, this isn't on the work plan. It may not be something that staff can do immediately and drop other things to do. So I do think it's important to make sure we grandfather the current rate, depending on how long this takes. So I don't know if grandfather is a word that our staff does that work? Or we could just say retain the seniors rate of $70 an hour.
I can't imagine anything more appropriate than grandfathering a senior's rate, but grandparenting a senior's rate. All right, that's way better. Over to GM Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have a seniors rate in our rentals. So my suggestion to the committee would be if they want to request a change to the fees and charges bylaw to have this rate provide a youth rate provided to this particular group. We could certainly look at doing that, but I can't I guess I would look to perhaps our corporate officer. We have a bylaw in place and all staff is trying to do is follow the bylaw. So if you want a special rate for this group, if that's a youth rate or you want to us to amend our bylaw to be able to charge this group differently, I believe that we could certainly do that. But I think you're going to look at a bylaw amendment, but I'll maybe turn it over to the corporate officer for comment.
And I will too, but this is why we need a staff report, because we're on the fly here and this is just not appropriate. Corporate officer, please.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the GM is correct. We do have rates set by bylaw, so legally we must abide by those rates until that bylaw is amended.
Thank you. All right. Director Bax, are you, or Director White, did you want to
I
follow
feel
up?
like we're kind of reversing and talking about the report we already asked for and passed. No,
Yes.
I mean, that
We-
was a direction by the board. That's
Yes,
happened.
it was a
So
direction.
I
We've
just want to
already
make
passed it.
sure that until we get the report and make a decision, until the board gets a report and makes a decision on a rate review, that we retain a rate of $70 an hour for the group, the Rusty Cranks Seniors Hockey Club. Is that it?
I'm not sure we can retain a rate. Over to GM Gagnon.
That's what we've been charging them.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. As we provided the information to the group and as per the letter, I believe, I'm just looking at it, we did suggest that we would not implement this change to them until next season. So we gave them a year's notice, which would mean August 1 of 2024, they would have to pay the new rate. So we didn't want to have anything happen to them mid-season. So I think that gives us time to bring back a report. The group won't be impacted at this point in time, and that provides us the time that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent. I think we're fine. Director Bax, is there anything further or we can
Yes.
move on?
Yeah, no, Seniors Day at the ice rink, yes, I like it. But I have been in contact, this group has been in contact with me, and I, in my capacity as a problem solver, have encouraged them, and I will encourage them again now, to seek out grants for seniors' physical fitness that they can use to apply to their hockey league. We're not the only game in town. There's other organizations out there that are offering help to seniors to maintain their physical fitness. And I would encourage the group to try every avenue available to them, not just depend on us to make these decisions over the length of time that it takes to make them.
Thank you. All right. We're moving on in our agenda. Next item up is motion for which notice has been given, and over to Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just get the motion in front of me here. Wonderful. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Directors, for allowing me to introduce this motion. And a special thank you to everybody who's here today and who is online, and especially to everybody who wrote in with their concerns. I want to first address those concerns, and I'm really happy that you raised them beforehand. So I want to thank you all, everybody who wrote in. Your comments made me think long and hard, and it made me realize that I failed to read the room. And what I mean by that is that there were a lot of climate emergency declarations back in 2019. That was just after the 2018 IPCC report. So I think about 380 plus local jurisdictions in Canada declared climate emergencies. And what I failed to realize is that since 2019, the world has changed quite a bit. Our worldview has changed quite a bit, and our relationship with the word emergency has changed a lot. So given that, I'm happy to change my motion to a climate crisis declaration. And under therefore be, I guess I will read the therefore be it resolved that the Sunshine Coast Regional District officially declare a climate crisis for the purpose of formalizing and deepening our commitment to protecting our community, ecosystems, and economy from global warming, and that the board continue to develop policy and demonstrate leadership that directs meaningful action on this climate crisis declaration, and that staff bring the Community Climate Action Plan back for review and consideration of adoption at a future special board meeting, and provide the board with a list of actions that can be started in 2024, and be it further resolved that the special meeting be scheduled no later than end of Q2 2024.
Hold on 1 second. Do I see a seconder?
Oh, yes.
Seconded. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's on the floor, and you may continue.
Very important. Thank you very much. So the purpose of the motion was not to create more anxiety or fear in the residents, and it was not to grant us special powers. The purpose of it was to signal to the community and to our staff, who hopefully is watching, and to each other, that this is a problem that we're facing, and we need to take urgent action. So the purpose was to push us to move quickly to address climate adaptation and mitigation. So I'm happy with with changing the word there. The purpose remains the same. The other purpose of this motion was to get us to quickly look at the draft Community Climate Action Plan, which was presented to us back in the fall. It was in the middle of one of these meetings, and it was a very busy meeting, and I felt like it was not, like staff had worked so hard with the community. I think a lot of people who are here today worked on that Climate Action Plan along with staff, and I feel like we needed to honor this work and spend more time to look at it and to really carve a path forward. What are we going to do as a local government? What can we do as a local government? What is appropriate for us to do as a local government? So one of the asks of the motion is for a special meeting, and I recognize that our time is limited and precious, and that we all want to spend more time with our families and or working, but I really think it would be best if we had enough time to, with the help of staff, to look through this climate action plan and really set a path forward for us. And then, so I'm really excited about this discussion today. I think it's going to be really good, and I really appreciate everybody being here. With that, I yield the floor.
Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. This is one I've been struggling with a fair bit because of the anxiety around emergency. So I appreciate the changing from emergency to crisis. I continue to struggle with even like that, the entire first block of the resolution there. I would hope that, this is Chair's prerogative, of course, that we could sever the first block for voting separately. I support the work on the Community Climate Action Plan. I support us having a conversation about that quickly. I'm trying to avoid heightening anxiety, whether it's emergency or crisis or some other word that we don't have on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Toth. Where did you want to sever the motion?
So I would like to vote separately on that the Sunshine Coast Regional District officially declare a climate crisis for the purpose of formalizing and deepening our commitment to protecting our community, ecosystems, and economy from global warming.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly, is there a seconder, first off? Okay, there is a seconder. Well, that's where I was going to go to our corporate officer. What is the procedure on a severing motion?
Thank you, Chair. So per your procedures bylaw, if a director requests a motion be severed, then it shall be severed and voted on.
Great, we're severed. All right, so then procedurally, is the first part of the motion on the floor, or do we have to go, okay, so the first paragraph 1, therefore be it resolved, is now on the floor, and I will go to my speakers list. Director Bax.
Well, I think this is a well-crafted motion, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. I think that when my son comes back to me in the next decade, and if things are going the way that we see that they're going, and he tells me, he asks me what I did, what did I do in my position of influence, I have to look at him and say that I tried my best. And I'm not sure what the point of severing the motion is, but I just have to say that we have to recognize the place that we're in right now. It's already in our strategic plan. This is just to help reinforce that and to let each other know that we are taking this issue seriously. And personally, I do my best at home to try to mitigate my own impact on the climate. And we've been lied to for decades by entities that have just used their position to get money, and they've destroyed the climate. And it's time we stood up. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Director Stanford, but let's try not to go down too many rabbit holes here.
Thank you, Chair. I will be voting in favor of this motion. I appreciate that there are concerns in the community about not panicking, and there is never a use for panic, but there is a very strong direction to taking things seriously and looking at it holistically. I look at the number of local emergencies that have been declared in this area. I want to be able to look at it as a whole and not be severing out flooding versus fire versus drought. We need to see the combination and the pattern. So this helps me understand where the board sits within that more regional holistic approach to how we're dealing with climate change in this area. So I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I will be voting against the first motion simply because it's suggesting we need to deepen our commitment. I'm very committed and doing whatever is within my power and within my authority to combat this. But we deal with each proposal as it comes and we decide what we can do. I kind of take offense to the fact that I need to be told to deepen my commitment. I am committed. So that's my thoughts. I don't see a need for this, actually. I believe the whole board is committed, deeply committed. So it's redundant.
Thank you. Director White.
I don't take offense to it. Which I don't think should be a surprise. We do need to deepen our commitment. We're continuing to face, I'll use the word, like legitimate emergencies. We've had to declare states of emergency, and due to water shortages, and it's an entire community issue. It's a national issue. There have been wildfires raging, and I don't think this is causing panic. I mean, this is just accepting reality, and this motion talks about the purpose of formalizing and deepening our commitment, and I think that's just reality. That's protecting our community, ecosystems, and economy from global warming, from climate, the climate change we're experiencing undeniably. I think people in our community are doing that. I think people are deepening our commitment, and I think it's pretty easy for me to say that as governments we need to do that too, and to actually say it in a motion like this is. I mean, I appreciate that directors maybe individually feel they have deep commitments, and perhaps we're practicing our deep commitments in our households and in practices of how we get to and from meetings, things like that. But to actually say so as a board, I think is important, and I appreciate this motion and I support it.
I'm going to ask folks not to applaud, please. We're in a meeting. This is not appropriate either side. Director Inkster?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just some clarity. I thought that did the change to the original motion get first and seconded by Director Toth? So what are we speaking to now?
We are speaking to the very first paragraph
Okay,
after therefore be it resolved.
okay, great.
And with the change that it is a climate crisis, not an emergency.
Okay, great. Okay, just some clarification because of the emergency piece there. Yeah, I'm good with that then. That one?
Okay, I'm glad you're good with it.
Yeah, just
All right.
just clarification.
I'm sitting a little on the fence here. This is reminding me, for those of us who are a little older, of when Vancouver declared itself a nuclear-free zone. I think that was in the 70s. And it wasn't like there were any nuclear plants or likely to be them any time in the future. But if there is one thing that we electoral area directors are familiar with, it's futile gestures. That seems to be our whole department here. So, yeah, I guess seeing no further hands up on this one, I'm going to call the question. It has been severed already. I'm calling the question for the first paragraph. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's 2 opposed. Would you like that recorded? Thank you. All right. The rest of the motion needs to go on the floor. Is there a mover? Yes, I see a mover and a seconder, so that is for the further 3 paragraphs. Is there further conversation? Questions, debate? I'm not seeing anything. All right, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? All right, any opposed? None are opposed. That passes. Thank you very much. I'm going to call a short 10-minute recess. We have an in-camera agenda after this, and so we will be back at 10:45. Thank you. Welcome back to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Thursday, February 8th, 2024. I'm going to take a motion to go in camera, then I'm going to take a few public questions on items that were on today's agenda. And so, could I see a motion to go in camera under Section 91A and E of the Community Charter? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? All right, we will go in camera, and now for public questions. If you have a question, please come up to one of the mics at the front of the room so that the folks in the studio audience can hear you.
I have a question. No worries. I have a question about the climate crisis, that motion that was put forward. Have you guys considered the declaration by over 1,500 scientists and climatologists that signed the specific declaration that there is no climate emergency? So my whole background on what I do is try and look at both sides, right? Because there's both sides of a piece of paper. Forgive me, I don't do this. But this is all I'm asking is consider not just one source coming down from the governments, just look at other sources from scientists that are reputable, right? And I have so much data, like for example, in Gibson's, their database for their climate, where they collect water, temperatures and stuff like that, there was no droughts. Yes, it was warm. It's been very warm. But the only drought seasons that we had back was in 2018 and 2017 in Gibson's that were 6.6 and 5 point.
Okay,
Anyway, so my point is if we do the research and actually look at the data and in our previous history, Mother Earth breathes. I mean, we go through our warming cycles, we go through our cooling cycles, and that's the way Mother Earth is, right? So yes, be prepared for crisis, just like we have fire departments because we anticipating maybe fires that'll break out. And we have the ambulance service that is there in case somebody gets sick severely. But we have these things in motion and planned in case of emergency. Yes, granted, let's have things in place for emergency, but think about, let's look at both sides of the argument before we start running off at like maybe Chicken Little saying, the sky is falling, right?
Thank you very much. I'm going to thank you. And yes, we do try to consider all the evidence when we are making decisions at the board table. So are there any further questions on the agenda?
I've got a question, if I might, for Mr. Rosenblum. And West Seashell, I think, has been identified as a deficient area in terms of fire flow.
It's necessary to address the chair.
Oh,
in
I'm
a
sorry.
meeting.
Okay.
It's the Roberts Rules of Order. So you ask your question to me, and then I can, if I choose, because I'm the chief here, director.
Okay, my apologies. West Seashell is an area that's been identified as deficient in fire flow. And so there's also an infrastructure deficit there, obviously, and I don't know whether it's water mains that are needing upgrading, reservoir capacity, whatever. Is this going to be addressed in this report coming up on the 22nd? And I guess where do we go from there? What are we looking at in terms of improvements and costing and this sort of thing? I guess the second question is, looking at the map on the wall, there are deficient areas throughout the system, and how do we prioritize what's going to be accorded first, second, third priority?
Right, and I can tell you right now that prioritizing is going to be part of the water action plan because it's not simple, as we can see.
It's a complex issue.
And so I'm wondering, GM Rosenboom, if you can give us an idea of what will be in the report coming up in 2 weeks.
Thank you for the question, Chair. The report the report in 2 weeks is going to have a similar nature as the one presented today. It's primarily a map of the results of what the fire flows analysis is concluding for as an outlook for the mid-2040s. It does not indicate any actions, what could be done, etc. There's way more work required before we can get there. And that's part of the fire flow action plan that after board adoption of the budget, we will start the process. And I hope that by the end of the summer, I think it will be more likely early fall, we'll have information to present to the board in terms of what needs to be done to address each of those areas. What are the options to address that? Is that infrastructure upgrades or other proposed alternatives? And then we can have a conversation with the board, and the board can consider if they want to adopt the plan as is, send it back for further amendments, etc., etc.
Thank you. And just as a quick follow-up, in most cases where there is low fire flow, do we know why? Or are we still speculating, or is that part of the further research needing to be done?
We have some idea, but not definitive. And the general is there's insufficient infrastructure available, but what it is and how to address that can be completely different from area to area. So we have some ideas, but it's really area specific.
Thank you very much. So, okay, quick follow-up.
District of Sechelt is not administering subdivision approvals or servicing agreements right now, so basically a moratorium on development. Do we have any idea how long this will continue?
Well, unfortunately, we can't answer that, not being the District of Sechelt. So,
well, can Mr. Rosenblum give me an idea?
I don't believe we can answer for them. You would have to ask Sechelt on that. Yes, I too have many questions, and I am saving most of them for 2 weeks from now, but GM Rosenboom?
Thank you. We are approvals within the District of Sechelt that can proceed we are proceeding with those. And because they can proceed, for example, when they're downtown Sechelt, where the fire flows are as they are, we are providing our final reviews on those as we speak.
So, in other words, there is no blanket moratorium. It's only a few properties where there are low fire flow concerns where there is a pause.
As indicated by our CEO 2 weeks ago, it's on a case-by-case basis, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one more.
Good. Oh, green light. Okay, great. Thank you for the first speaker there. I'm in total agreement about this climate change being kind of overused, because all you have to do is go on the internet and have a look at Plymouth Rock from, like, the sea level hasn't changed since people first landed here in North America from Europe. It's the same level. So Al Gore and all that kind of stuff anyways. So a couple of other things here.
Just to be clear, are you asking a question?
I'm asking a question about this whole deciding to use words like emergency and crisis and so on and so forth that legally have a lot of leverage over us. And we just went through this thing with Trudeau being busted for doing the Emergency Measures Act illegally because the Senate never did vote on, because it has to, in that system there, Parliament has to vote, and then the Senate has to vote. Well,
Right.
he
So-
kind of did an end run around that and didn't give the Senate a chance to vote. So that whole Emergency Act thing was entirely illegal. And that's being debated and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of off topic here. But the other
Yes,
thing
I was
I'm-
hoping for a question.
Yes, okay, so I'm questioning the usage of pouring powdered aluminum into the regional district water system when there is turbidity, okay? Because I read this in the Coast Reporter, that it's like, oh, standard practice here that when there's turbidity, which is dirt in the water from when everything, that we just pour powdered aluminum in there, and that makes all the sediment settle down. Well, there's no deep thinking going in there about the dangers of aluminum exposure, especially when it's in particle form.
Right, and we could revisit that at a future time. It's a flocculant that's used in water purification plants all across North America. And what happens is it settles out, and we remove it, so it doesn't go into the water that's in your tap.
So they say.
Well, yes, we test the water on a regular basis to make sure that there is nothing in it that shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, well,
So
I really
that's what
I
testing
question
is
that.
for
I question the validity
public safety.
of the science of that.
Well, yes, we're not in charge of the science here, and we're not in charge of Prime Minister Trudeau. So if you have any questions and we don't have a state of emergency.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions here. One is about the...
Sorry, I'll take one more question, and then we really do have to get on with the boring but necessary business of local government.
Okay, the question about the water supply on the coast here. Studies have been done that there's a massive aquifer up in the north end of the coast here, of Sunshine Coast, because somebody had to prove it to get their permit, whatever, and so on and so forth. So, yes, we have arsenic issues with the water supply up there, but it's pockets of arsenic. And so I would suggest that the regional district, I really applaud this whole thing about getting better water resources and then just doing what needs to be done to do that. But one of the things that we're really overlooking is that the top end of the Sunshine Coast here, or our area anyway, has massive amounts of lakes up there. And those lakes never go down. So that means that the water isn't draining out of the ground, which means we're sitting on one of the hugest sources of fresh water that is kind of unrecognized. So yes, it costs a lot of money to drill those and pipe them and all that kind of stuff, but it's not like as if we don't have any water in the bank. We've got a lot of water in the bank, and so I would suggest that we look at tapping into that, and then get away from this Garden Bay Lake thing where people are drinking water, that's got runoff from the roads and so on and so forth. Like that's a stopgap, but it's not really.
Thank you. We will be going forward with long-term water planning, and sources are part of the discussion, and also tying in, it's been talked about before, tying in the north-south Pender to the south rest of the coast. Hasn't been done yet, but it's feasible.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we really need to continue with our agenda. I hope there are no other pressing questions related to our agenda. We need to go in camera right now, so I'm going to ask everyone who is not in local government to please leave the room so we can go in camera. Thank you. Thank you. We return now to our regular scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, February the 8th, 2024. Do I see a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.